I transmigrated into the role of the villainous male supporting character in a sweet romance story set in the entertainment industry. I accompanied the female lead through her toughest days, watching her rise from obscurity to become a well-known and aloof queen of the silver screen. I dedicated all my efforts and resources to her. However, I was well aware that Sophia had someone deep in her heart, and over the years, she had never forgotten him. I also knew that in a sweet romance, the male supporting character was merely there to enhance the love story of the main characters. But I never expected Sophia to say to me, if my life were a script, I would tear it apart with my own hands and rewrite a plot that belongs only to us. The story is about to begin. If you like it, remember to like and subscribe. Sophia is on the trending list again. As a top-tier celebrity, it's not unusual for her to be on the hot topics. But this time, it's with David, a senior from the same company. She has been in the industry for 5 years, shining like a purple star that has descended from the sky. She's dazzling on stage and full of charm in movies and TV dramas. At a young age, she has already won the Best Actress award and has never been involved in any romantic scandals. One of her photos went viral. In the photo, she had just stepped off the highly anticipated stage, her dress trailing on the ground. Fans were screaming wildly, and the light hit half of her face. Fine sweat slid down her fair neck. She was full of grace as she looked around, exuding a captivating charm. But the other half of her face was in the shadow of the light, making her seem as cold as a goddess who remained unmoved, and nothing could tempt her to fall. Half glamorous and half silent, she was the most eye-catching presence in the room. Some people say that Sophia is the brightest starlight in the Arctic, something that can't be held onto or grasped. All one can feel is that distant, shocking beauty and the piercing cold. Behind the search terms of Sophia and David, there is a red explosive tag, which comes from a video at a press conference. Sophia abandoned the big-name scripts for the first time and chose the Chinese ancient idol drama His Majesty's Command, performing on the same stage as David. In the video, a reporter asked Sophia, "Which line in the drama do you like the most?" She smiled gently. She played a female general who was deeply in love with the emperor, the male lead, and was willing to give everything for him. At the moment, it was a popular trend to show the female lead's heroic and valiant demeanor on the battlefield. Sophia turned her head, raised her eyes, and met David's gaze. She only reached David's shoulder, but she gracefully moved her steps, slightly squatted down, and curtsied, just like the female general in the drama who was always infatuated with the emperor. Her eyes were peach-shaped, and when they curved, they were filled with love. She said, "Sophia is willing to be the most dazzling pearl on your imperial crown, willing to expand your territory and spread your fame, willing to be by your side forever like a weeping willow around an embankment. Sophia hopes that her name can be remembered in history together with yours. Sophia is willing to offer all she has, my emperor." The whole audience fell silent. David cooperatively reached out his hand and gently tucked her hair behind her ear. Their eyes met, and there was a tender current flowing between them. In an instant, screams erupted, flashlights crisscrossed, and countless media reporters thrust their microphones forward. The video stopped at this moment. The comments section immediately boiled over. Even Sophia's fans started to celebrate. Isn't this love? The high-spirited emperor and the heroic female general, who wouldn't ship them? The look in Sophia's eyes, what else could it be but love? After all these years, Sophia finally has a guy she likes. I unconsciously rubbed the screen. On the screen, Sophia's eyes were bright, filled with a galaxy of stars, a look I had never seen before. I helplessly sighed, leaned back resignedly, pinched the bridge of my nose, and thought, so, this day has finally come. I transmigrated into the book a long time ago. I was 15 years old and in my second year of high school at that time. This is a sweet romance story, and the female lead is Sophia, the well-deserved top-tier celebrity and the newly crowned queen of the silver screen. She is cold and distant, but only shows a rare tenderness to the male lead, David. They had a reunion after a long separation. They got to know each other in high school. Sophia comes from a wealthy family, a real heiress. David is a transfer student, handsome and unrestrained. According to the plot, in the third year of high school, Sophia's family would experience a major upheaval. The high and mighty young lady would suddenly fall into the dust. The down and out and miserable her would be redeemed by David, so as not to go astray. Then, due to various reasons such as David going abroad, they would have a reunion after many years. With David's company, Sophia would shine brightly in the entertainment industry, and their relationship would receive everyone's attention and blessings. But after I transmigrated, David went abroad much earlier than in the plot. He left when Sophia was still testing him, directly missing the plot of Sophia's family's downfall, and naturally, he couldn't redeem her. It was me who held the 18-year-old girl who had lost her parents overnight, put my arm around her slender and emaciated waist, and accompanied her through that dark time. Sophia had never been so helpless. She silently shed tears in my ear with red eyes, as if she was holding onto the last straw of survival. Later, I protected Sophia and brought her back to the spotlight again. Sophia was originally the most outstanding creation of the creator. She was discovered and entered the entertainment industry, made movies, and released albums. I went to the premiere of her first movie. Watching her struggle to turn around in the rain on the screen, her eyes were like snow, cold and desolate. The audience around gasped in shock. So I happily called her who was walking on the red carpet and said, "Sophia, I saw it." I also went to her first stage performance. I sat in the middle seat. The whole audience cheered and screamed for her. Countless LED lights lit up for her, and they called out Sophia's name. At that moment, I knew that she would never be my girl. I was submerged in the crowd, smiling as I watched Sophia shine brightly in the center of the stage, but my heart was full of bitterness and helplessness. I accompanied her through the toughest days, but I also knew that her bright future didn't belong to me. Sophia may not know that I wrote the original novel of the drama David starred in. However, the sincere feelings I wrote had to be heard by Sophia as she said them to David. "I am willing to be your sharpest sword, your majesty. My heart is dedicated to the vast land." There were countless moments when I realized that no matter how long I accompanied Sophia, this dazzling girl would never belong to me. But I didn't ask for much. I only hoped that she would be happy and well. I said to myself, it's time for the canon fodder male supporting character to leave. Strip away the glory that doesn't belong to you. I slowly drank a bowl of porridge, stared at the freesia on the windowsill in a daze for a while, then went back to my room and packed all my things. I didn't have many things, and they just fit into a small suitcase. I dialed Sophia's phone. I called several times, and finally, someone answered on the third call. It was Sophia's assistant, Chloe. Chloe said, "Mr. James, Sophia is changing her costume." Before she could finish speaking, the phone was eagerly taken away. Sophia's distant voice came, "Is that James? Give it to me quickly." Sophia walked out while talking, and the noisy sound gradually faded away. She said, "Hello, Mr. James, what's up?" I didn't feel much at first, but when Sophia's clear voice came, it was inevitable to feel a bit sad. I raised my head, thinking about the 10 years we had spent together. Scenes flashed by and then surged back like a tide. However, the long speech Sophia had just said to David also echoed in my mind. Everything we had experienced seemed like an unchangeable destiny. So I thought for a while and said, "Sophia, I'm leaving." She was stunned. After a pause, she said casually, "Is Mr. James going out to relax? Are you going domestic or abroad? Are you going in a few days?" "You can tell Chloe. She often books flights. But can you wait for a couple of days? I want my agent to rearrange my schedule. I also want to go with you. I heard there's a place with beautiful scenery." The voices around her gradually became louder. Someone shouted, "Miss Sophia, the TV drama is about to start shooting." But Sophia didn't pay attention to them. I interrupted her rambling and said word by word, "It's not like that. I'm leaving you." I tried my best to pretend to be saying goodbye to an old friend. "Sophia, goodbye." After a moment of silence, I hung up the phone. I was a bit worried that she would hear my unsteady tone, and also worried that she would say good with a sigh of relief. This small house was bought by me when Sophia wasn't famous yet. At that time, I had saved a moderate amount of manuscript fees and paid the down payment. It was a 2-bedroom, 1-living-room house. She and I each had a small room. Later, when Sophia became a star, this place was no longer suitable for her. There were too many people here, and entertainment reporters could easily follow her. Her agent didn't allow her to expose the fact that she was living with someone during her rising period. I accompanied Sophia to explain again and again, saying that we were just family, but I knew it was inevitable. I had once briefly had the blazing starlight, but I was extremely clear-minded that she never belonged to me. Sophia moved to a residential area with good privacy, and her schedule became busier day by day. She always called me, telling me about the new scripts she had taken and the new dances she had rehearsed, but she was too busy. Later, when I called her, she was always at events, filming, or preparing for the stage. After that, she would call me back tiredly. I felt sorry that Sophia was too tired, so I stopped calling later. I didn't have many friends here. After getting off work at the publishing house, I would come back and write something. When I was writing His Majesty's command, I arranged a line for the female general. "She will return in the snow, with a vast royal city and thousands of troops and horses behind her. She would dismount from her horse, curtsy to the young king, and say, "I am willing to be your sharpest sword, cutting through thorns and thistles for you. I am willing to be your most solid shield, sheltering you from the wind and rain." When I wrote those words, it was actually my inner monologue. I wanted to be Sophia's sword and shield, but I could do nothing. All I could give was a hug. According to the plot of the novel, Sophia met David when he and other boys came to the company for an interview, a reunion after a long separation. The description in the book was, when they met, she remained calm, walked briskly past David as if they were strangers, but in fact, she was overjoyed and her heart was fluttering. So, for the sake of her beloved, she took the role of the female supporting character in the script that David participated in. She, who was always cold and distant, was so bold and proactive just to get closer to the person she loved. Starting from this press conference, it was the beginning of the sweet and ambiguous plot in their story. I had accompanied Sophia for so many years, and finally, the male lead appeared. I finished all the work, handover and other things in this small house. Then, I dragged the suitcase to the door. As soon as I opened the door, I found it was raining. The rain was not small, and it hit my heart, making me feel dull pain. I was just about to close the door to get an umbrella when I found a fair hand propping on the doorframe. The wrist was slender, and there was a beautiful silver iris ring on the middle finger. I opened the door wider and let out a deep sigh. Sophia was standing at the door. It was raining outside, but she was soaked. Her bangs hung between her delicate eyebrows and eyes. The charming light in her eyes dimmed by half. Her peach-shaped eyes drooped, and there was a hint of redness. Sophia was still wearing the ancient costume from the crew. She had casually wrapped up her wide sleeves. The rain flowed down her small nose, and she actually looked like she was crying. She probably came in a hurry and was still panting slightly. Her red lips were pursed pale, showing a bit of panic, which was very different from her usual coldness, like a child about to be abandoned. Sophia stared at me stubbornly, her voice a bit hoarse. "James, where are you going?" The rain rolled down from her jawline and neck, disappearing into the half-wet front of her clothes. I paused and asked, "Did you run out of the crew?" She interrupted me, looked up at me, and asked again, "Where are you going?" I rubbed the center of my brows and said, "I'm going back to Hawaii. It's too noisy here. I don't belong here anymore. I want to set off fireworks on the beach at night in Hawaii and eat the pizza from the store downstairs of my house." Sophia's hand holding the doorframe trembled slightly. She asked softly, "What about me?" I saw that there were already people walking in the corridor. She was such a well-known star, and I was worried that she would be photographed by reporters and passers-by. I sighed, slightly turned my body, and motioned for her to come in. Although Sophia hadn't lived here for a long time, her room and wardrobe were still kept. I urged her to take a hot bath. She looked at me several times, a bit hesitant. I was both angry and amused. I said, "I won't leave while you're taking a bath." Then Ed. Sophia's phone was on silent, but the missed calls and WeChat messages kept popping up. Sophia glanced at it, then turned the phone over on the coffee table and went into the bathroom with her clothes. I received a call from her assistant, Chloe. Assistant Chloe was in a panic and asked me if Sophia was with me. I gently Ed and said, "Don't worry. She'll be back later." Chloe felt relieved. I then called Sophia's agent and asked her to handle the possible situation of Sophia being photographed on the way. After doing all these, only a short time had passed, and I was lost in thought. Sophia was actually very serious about filming. There were always rumors about big-name stars throwing tantrums, but she had never done such things. I accidentally clicked on a new song of Sophia's. Her voice in the phone was tender, attached, and full of affection, like a confession from the galaxy. "You are my silent dependence, but I don't feel anything different. I crown you with all I have. No one knows this feeling that doesn't burden you." My heart felt hot when I heard it, but the barrage scrolled by. David must have gotten the male lead role with Sophia's help. The love that is hidden and patient is the most touching. Guys. I thought about it and felt a bit embarrassed for my momentary self-indulgence. But according to the original plot, it should be like this. She writes songs for him, dedicates everything to him, and gives him the best without even realizing it. If Sophia's love in high school was as hot as the sun, then now, after going through hardships, this love has become deeper and more hidden, like the shimmering sea surface under the moon. But it's reasonable for anyone to like Sophia because she's such a lovely person. The song was slow and gentle, as if she was singing softly in my ear. I was lost in thought as soon as I heard it. When I heard the sound of Sophia coming out, I subconsciously looked up and paused the song like a person trying to deceive themselves. Sophia changed into a white silk shirt. Half of her collarbone was exposed from the collar. Her hair was half dry. Taking a bath probably made her feel much more relaxed. Her usual charm seeped out from her bones. Hearing this familiar melody, she was stunned for a moment, then smiled like a little fox, listening to my new song. I nodded and said, "It's quite good." But she didn't say anything. A bit of redness climbed up her ears, and she seemed to respond indifferently with an "eh." The atmosphere suddenly became dull, and we didn't know what to say. I had a few hours left before my flight, and I had to say goodbye to her. I told her, "Don't run away without saying anything next time." They're all very worried. Sophia usually hates being lectured, but this time she listened quietly. I said, "I've already bought the ticket. It's raining outside, so you don't need to see me off. If sometimes you still think of me, you can come to Hawaii to have a beer with me when you pass by." It turns out that when saying goodbye, it's not about bursting into tears, but about maintaining the decency of a friend in a very restrained way. Sophia didn't speak for a long time. I sighed and got up to leave. Who knew that when I passed by her, my cuff was grabbed? Sophia said, "I won't come to drink beer with you. I won't pass by Hawaii occasionally." She raised her eyes and looked at me very stubbornly. The corners of her eyes were faintly red. For a moment, I thought she was going to cry. For so many years, after going through so much hardship, she only cried silently in my arms on the afternoon when she lost her parents. I patiently bent down slightly and said, "Sophia, have you ever thought that you're just used to my company? In fact, at that time, whoever came to hug you, you would accept it." Sophia was stunned. Her face turned as pale as if she had been humiliated. She stared straight at me and almost gritted her teeth as she said, "James, do you have a heart? It can only be you, and it will only be you." Just as the situation froze, my phone rang. Somehow, the ringtone had become Sophia's new song, and the climax part sounded, "I crown you with all I have." No one knows this feeling that doesn't burden you. I felt a bit embarrassed. Sophia was still clutching my cuff, so I answered the phone with my other hand. It was the crew of His Majesty's Command. They had just announced the casting and held a press conference some time ago, and now they had probably shot a small part. They wanted me to join the crew to oversee the plot, and work with the screenwriter to improve the plot and modify the storyline. I was a bit hesitant. If I joined the crew, I would probably run into Sophia and David many times, and I had just been thinking about leaving. The person on the phone said politely, "We all hope to present your work to the audience in the best possible way, so we really hope you can participate." In the end, I nodded. I suddenly remembered that Sophia didn't know I had written the novel. When I looked down, I saw a smile curling up on her thin lips, which had been pursed just now. She propped her face with one hand, looking relaxed. Her delicate eyes were shining, and there was no sign of surprise. I raised my voice and said, "You don't mean to say you knew I wrote His Majesty's Command, do you?" She curved her eyes, curled her legs up, hugged her knees, and nestled into the sofa. She tilted her head slightly and said proudly, "Mr. James, please give me your guidance." It was just like that midsummer when she sat by the window, with cicadas chirping all over the tree. The side face of the girl was full of affection, and she curled the corners of her lips and said, "Hello, James. Please give me your guidance." Sophia was always like this. She never really needed my help. I told Sophia to keep her distance from me and the crew and pretend we didn't know each other. She raised her eyes and replied reluctantly, "Oh." The drama His Majesty's Command mainly tells the story of an emperor from being a crown prince to ruling the world. David plays the male lead, William. The female lead is the daughter of the Prime Minister, who is his childhood sweetheart. The second female lead is the princess of a rival country, and the third female lead is the female general played by Sophia. Sophia doesn't have many scenes. It seems that she took this role just to support David. The crew arranged a room for me in the hotel here. Just as I finished packing and walked out of the room, I met Olivia, who plays the first female lead. Olivia entered the entertainment industry in college and has been on the acting path after graduation. Now she is a very capable and well-reputed female star. Coincidentally, Olivia was also my classmate in the same department in college. Speaking of which, several of my roommates once made a fuss, spreading rumors that James and Olivia are well matched, which caused quite a few misunderstandings between us in college. Olivia was wearing a mask, with her black eyes showing. She had an intellectual air about her. When she saw me, she was stunned for a moment. Presumably, her agent had mentioned me to her. Olivia quickly reacted and smiled with her eyes bent through the mask, saying, "So it's really you. Long time no see, James." I replied, "Yeah." It was just afternoon, and the crew had a script reading session. Before shooting, the main actors were going to read the script together to feel the emotions of their characters. Olivia looked up at me and said, "Since we happen to meet, let's go together." I had no reason to refuse, so I nodded. Olivia and I were just nodding acquaintances in college. She always spoke in a warm and appropriate way. Now that we're established contact, it didn't feel particularly awkward. We entered the room, and almost everyone was there. I could immediately see Sophia lounging lazily in a corner. She was wearing a black lace-trimmed shirt, with one hand pressing on the script. Sophia raised her eyes, first looking at me, then glancing at Olivia beside me. Her mouth drooped unhappily, looking angry. After everyone arrived, we introduced the characters we played one by one. I hadn't seen David for a long time. He looked even more refined and amiable than in the online photos. When our eyes met, he smiled without surprise, a typical friendly male star. Then we started going through the lines. This scene was the first encounter between Emily, played by Sophia, and William, played by David. Emily had a tragic background. When she was young, she fought with beggars for food and sparrows for grains. It was not until the male lead appeared that a ray of light shone into her hopeless life. In this scene, when Emily was in her teens, she was severely beaten by the store owner for stealing a steamed bun. She was covered in bruises and lying in the rain when she saw the male lead's luxurious carriage with golden bells passing by. Sophia got into the role quickly. Although she was still wearing the black shirt and holding the script, straightening her back, her expression was exactly the same as that of the girl who was almost hopelessly dying in the rain. She was shivering from the cold but tried her best to open her eyes unwillingly, for fear that if she closed them, she would become a dry bone by the roadside. David held the script and read, calling his guard's name, and leaning lazily back on the chair, just like the young and pampered crown prince. He said, "Mark, why isn't the carriage moving?" It turned out that Emily, who had fallen across the road, blocked the noble's carriage. Just as the coachman's whip was about to land on Emily, William lifted the heavy purple carriage curtain, looked down condescendingly, and casually stopped him, imitating the crown prince's tone and saying, "Forget it. It's just a beggar. Find someone to take her to see a doctor and leave some silver." Emily was almost blinded by the rain. All she could see was a corner of the tall and luxurious carriage curtain. Inside, it was luxurious, and not a single drop of the heavy rain could penetrate the carriage. The imposing crown prince slightly stuck his head out and easily gave her a way to survive. Lying in the mud, covered in bruises and almost blinded by the rain, she was like someone afraid that the beautiful dream in the rain would shatter. She presumptuously asked, "Who are you?" The young man smiled faintly, as if showing contempt or disbelief. He didn't say anything, and the heavy purple carriage curtain closed again. This was their first encounter, which became a dream that Emily could never forget in her life. Sophia leaned back, and in an instant, she became that cold girl again. Sophia suddenly said, "I don't quite understand." Even if William reached out to her in her most desperate moment and gave her a few pieces of silver, Emily might be grateful and even repay him with her life, but she would never fall in love with him desperately. I looked at Sophia, and our eyes met for a second. Sophia leaned forward and said softly, "Unless what he gave was a warm hug in the heavy rain, a hug that could resist all the cold." Sophia was very certain, as if at that moment she was Emily, and she was so convinced. I was stunned. Memories came flooding back. I gathered my thoughts and said, "But that's impossible." At this time, William's character is a crown prince. He has pity for the common people, but he would never easily hug a strange girl who was covered in mud and whose life or death is unknown. Sophia's eyes were pitch black, with little dots of light flowing in them, like a reflection of the starry sky. David suddenly said, "But if it was the attendant, it would be okay, right? If William's attendant gave her this hug instead of him, it would make sense." "But why would the attendant give a dying beggar a hug?" Sophia closed her eyes, pursed her thin lips, and said lightly, "Who knows? Maybe out of pity." I stared blankly at Sophia, suddenly remembering the year when Sophia's family fell into trouble. The high and mighty girl suddenly fell to the bottom. She lost her parents and relatives overnight, and the platycodon flowers were left in the wind. I slowly approached Sophia and gently hugged the desperate and painful her. Would she think this was out of pity? I never got an answer. However, this part of the plot was slightly changed. In this first encounter in the heavy rain, Emily, played by Sophia, had a misplaced hug. After the script reading session, I returned to the hotel. When I passed the fire escape, someone gently tugged at my sleeve and pulled me into the darkness. The door was half open, and a little light came in. I looked at the girl in front of me. Sophia was pressed against me. The space was very narrow, and I could smell her snow-like fragrance in my breath. I lowered my head and asked in confusion, "What are you doing?" Sophia slightly raised her head, and a smile appeared in her peach-shaped eyes. She said, "You said I have to pretend not to know you in front of others, so I can only talk to you here, right?" I moved back uncomfortably, raised my head to seem more confident, but accidentally rubbed my chin against her forehead. The warm touch disappeared in an instant. After a moment of silence, I asked her, "So what's the matter?" Just then, someone walked through the corridor. It seemed to be her assistant looking for her, muttering, "Sophia was here just now. How could she disappear suddenly?" I turned my head back and met Sophia's black eyes. The sporadic smile in her eyes disappeared. The light leaking in through the half-open fire escape door faintly fell on her face. This face, which was hailed as the most beautiful in the entertainment industry, looked even more profound and charming. Sophia licked her lips, leaned one hand against the wall, and stood on tiptoe to barely reach the level of my lips. She pursed her lips several times but didn't say anything. If I didn't know her, I would really think she was nervous. No matter how big the occasion or how big the stage, Sophia had never been stage frightened. However, in this small, silent and audience-less safe passage, she thought about a sentence many times before she was willing to say it. She asked softly, who would be willing to give a hug to someone who has fallen into the abyss? I looked at her drooping peach-shaped eyes, and for a moment, I couldn't tell whether she was asking about Emily in the play or Sophia in reality. When Sophia was 18, what awaited her was not a princess-like glorious birthday party. First, David went abroad without a word, making the platycodon flowers she was going to use to express her feelings useless. Then, Sophia's family went bankrupt. Her father committed suicide in prison out of fear of crime, and her mother died of illness due to the blow. Overnight, she went from a girl surrounded by flowers to a person with a broken family. At that time, I searched all over Hawaii and found her in an old alley. She was leaning against the dilapidated cement wall. As the sun was setting, the freshly picked platycodon flowers rolled in the soil. I had found her, but I didn't know if I should approach her. I wasn't David. To her, I was probably just someone whose name she knew. Who would want to expose their vulnerable and down and out scene in front of an irrelevant person? What was I thinking at that time? I just looked at Sophia sadly, thinking that she might need a hug. I had nothing, but I had a hug. I walked over slowly. She leaned against the wall and glared at me fiercely, but her eyes were clearly red. When she saw it was me, she was stunned, and then silently lowered her eyes to look at the flowers on the ground. My heart ached. I thought she would tell me to go away, but she just gritted her teeth like a wounded kitten. She turned her face away and covered her eyes with her palm. I saw tears seeping through her fingers. The always proud girl was as fragile as the snow in the sunset. At that moment, the sunset fell into my heart. I had never been so brave in my life. I took a step forward and gently hugged her. I silently thought, don't be sad. I'll always be with you. I'll always be with you. Now, the 25-year-old Sophia asked me, who would hug someone who has fallen into the abyss? My palms were sweating. I lowered my eyes and said, I don't know. Sophia moved closer. Her eyes were cold, and she bit her lip and said, you don't know? Then I'll tell you. Do you know what pity is, James? When seeing Emily, who is covered in mud and can't survive, some people will give alms to show their pity, while some people will give a hug. What about you? What do you think? I was stunned. She gently approached me, as if sighing, as if pleading. The light and shadow fell on her eyes, and she said, tomorrow's scene of Emily's first encounter in the rain, the script was changed temporarily, and we haven't found a suitable character to hug Emily. It's just a few-second shot. Will you act with me? I need you. No one else can do it except you. I carefully looked at her eyes and brows. Her beauty was tinged with a bit of madness. Sophia pleaded, just accompany me this last time. I thought, well, I'll accompany you on this part of the journey one more time, the last time. I softly said yes. She was too close to me. Everywhere I could feel her breath. My heart felt like it was buried in snow. It was extremely cold, but I still couldn't help being attracted to her. I walked out, and she didn't stop me. When I was about to touch the door, she suddenly called me. I turned around. Sophia's eyes and brows were in the light and shadow. She looked at me quietly and said, James. I thought she was going to say something, but she just said softly, good night. When I walked out of the fire escape, I looked around, like a husband who had done something wrong. Sophia laughed softly behind me. The next day, for the scene of Emily's first encounter with William, because I had an extra role out of nowhere, when the director was having David do the makeup and styling, he also asked David's makeup artist to do mine. David's makeup room was separate. I was about to knock on the door when I faintly heard my name through the door. My suspended fingers stopped and didn't fall. Inside the makeup room, David's assistant asked, Mr. David, why did you suggest giving him part of your role? This character's appearance is really inexplicable. David smiled meaningfully and said, "Do you think I really wanted to suggest it?" It was Sophia. He suddenly stopped talking and then said, "It doesn't matter. Anyway, he's a character who isn't even a supporting role. Whether to add it or not doesn't matter. It just makes him experience more clearly what it means to be a supporting character." I gave a bitter smile, kept my expression unchanged, and withdrew my hand. When I turned around, I saw Olivia standing behind me. She probably heard everything. I waved my hand, pointed at the door, and mouthed, "I'll go in later." Olivia couldn't help but smile slightly with her eyes. She said softly, "You're so calm even after being spoken ill of, Mr. James." I shook my head and said, "No, I'm not calm." I thought, what he said was the truth. Whether in the play or in real life, I was a character who wasn't even a supporting role. When it was time to start shooting, it actually rained heavily, so the crew didn't need to worry about creating the rain effect. I played the attendant. The carriage encountered an obstacle while moving forward in the heavy rain. A dying girl was lying in the mud. I got up and lifted the curtain for William to check. The carriage was very close to the girl lying in the mud. From my angle, I could see the rain gathering in the small depressions on both sides of her high-bridged nose. The road beaten by the rain was muddy and difficult to drive on. The dirty and tattered girl was curled up, accompanied by the wet and cold mud, and there was a faint trace of blood spreading around. A long time ago, a very strict film critic said she was full of aura. I, who had no acting experience, was immediately drawn into the play by Sophia. She was the most desperate girl, a beggar who was only pitted by the rootless rain in this world. Emily's eyelids fluttered twice. The rain hit her wounds and got into her eyes. Her face was extremely pale, but she still tried her best to raise her eyes and look at me through the layers of rain curtains. I even thought there was a hint of light yellow in her eyes. Behind her was only the overwhelming rain. She was a beggar and an abandoned child of God. She had nothing. William's voice came from behind, "Mark, what's wrong?" I finally came back to my senses from the shock of her glance and replied, "There's a dying beggar blocking the way. The carriage can't move." Emily's black hair spread out and mixed with the mud. She looked up at the carriage that shouldn't have opened the curtain for her and curled her hands in embarrassment. She tried to struggle to stand up, but her legs were broken. She had no choice but to crawl towards the roadside bit by bit. She fell into the mud, silent, with the rain hitting her all over. At that moment, I was deeply touched. I knew why the attendant was willing to give her a hug. Anyone who saw her, who still maintained a bit of pride and dignity in her down and out state, would be moved. I thought of Sophia when she was 18. After Sophia's family collapsed, the flowers no longer bloomed for her, and malice came crashing down on her. I didn't see her for a long time after that hug. The first time I found her was at dusk. They said Sophia's family had left a lot of debts, and Sophia had a hard time at that time. In the novel, it was just a few lines, but seeing it with my own eyes, it was the countless days and nights of a once noble girl. I heard Sophia crying humbly for the first time, kneeling on the ground and begging for mercy. Those debt collectors were really despicable. They picked on a little girl like her and even hired hooligans to keep watch on her every day. I showed up one step earlier than Sophia every day and drove those hooligans away. Until one day, I was defeated. I got up, leaning against the wall, and walked out, only to find that Sophia was standing in the shadow on the other side of the wall. I didn't know how long she had been there, crying silently as she watched me. The sky outside was so beautiful, filled with the glow of the sunset. She handed me a band-aid, wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, and then turned and left. I followed her slowly, neither too close nor too far. We walked through the noisy crowd. The long street was bathed in the evening glow, and the people gradually thinned out. She stopped, and after a long time, she turned around, looking straight at me. Gazing at the bruises on my eyebrows and lips, she asked stubbornly, "How long have you been following me? How long do you want to watch me as a joke?" I raised my head and said, "I just want to be with you." She tugged at the corners of her mouth and said coldly, "I don't need it. Do you understand, James?" I sighed and turned my head away. I knew she didn't need my company, but what could I do? It seemed that I could do nothing. Then she suddenly softened her voice and said, "Leave me alone, James. You can go." At that moment, Sophia seemed to merge with Emily in the rain and mud in front of me. I got off the carriage. The umbrella tilted in the heavy rain, and I felt bitterly cold. I gently hugged her, as if across time and space, embracing the Sophia of many years ago. I said softly, "The journey ahead is long and arduous. Please take care of yourself." The sound of the rain faded away, and I heard her passionate heartbeat in the cold rain. Sophia at 18, Sophia at 25, they both had a long way to go. At this point, the director called cut.
I was still holding Sophia. Her assistant quickly came up with an umbrella to shield us from the rain.
I saw her forehead hair wet with rain, and beneath it, her eyes were black, bright, and stubborn. I regained my senses, let go of my hands, and my trembling hand just brushed against her hot skin.
After changing clothes in the dressing room, I unexpectedly met Olivia.
She was outside, holding a cup of warm ginger soup and handed it to me. I was a bit startled. She pursed her lips and said, "This is for you. It can help you get rid of the cold." I thanked her and took a sip, then stopped, because I've never liked the taste of ginger.
Olivia was good-looking, a bit like the heartthrob in the LGBTQ+ community.
Some people once made a mash-up video pairing her and Sophia, and it became popular for a while.
Thinking of that video, I felt like laughing. Olivia slightly raised her eyebrows and asked, "What's wrong?" I shook my head, holding back my laughter, and said, "I thought of something interesting."
Olivia didn't ask further and smiled. "Mr. James, you were so immersed in the role for your first acting.
You're really amazing." Hearing Olivia say this, I felt a bit more relaxed.
I was worried that my performance wasn't good enough and would affect the quality of the drama. But I thought to myself that I could get into the role because I saw Sophia in the rain. Without a single line, every move of hers was filled with heartache.
I was still thinking about the unfinished sentence of David's. Who wanted me to play such a role? Was it Sophia? But then, why?
I got caught in the rain and drank some hot soup, feeling a bit lazy in my thoughts. Just as I was about to speak, I saw Sophia approaching.
She was carrying a cup of something.
Her complexion wasn't very good, and her lips were still pale. She naturally took the ginger soup I had only taken 2 sips of from my hand, ignored Olivia, and held out the thermos cup in her hand to me, saying, "You don't like ginger, right?
Then why did you drink so much? This is the soup Chloe made for you personally."
Sophia's attitude was familiar, but her eyes were very unfriendly.
After that, Sophia raised her head angrily, bit her lip resentfully, and said, "Olivia, do you have anything else to do?"
Olivia pursed her lips and smiled, glanced at me, and said, "Since you two have something to do, I'll leave first."
I watched Olivia walk away and said helplessly, "Didn't we say we should pretend not to know or be unfamiliar with each other?"
Sophia snorted, but her voice was clearly tinged with grievance. "James, you pretend not to know me, but you force yourself to drink the ginger soup you don't like for her and chat with her happily.
You're so unfair." I keenly sensed Sophia's hostility towards Olivia and asked, "Did you two have a feud before?" Sophia was silent for a moment, then turned her eyes away and said awkwardly, "No." She added, "Well, not really. It's just my one-sided grudge." Sophia seemed quite justified in being angry. During the break on the set, I passed by Olivia.
The newly aired episode was playing on her tablet. It was exactly the scene of Emily's first encounter with William, frozen at the frame where the guard hugged Emily in the heavy rain. The rain rolled down her face as if she were crying. Sophia's face was truly a masterpiece of the creator. Every angle of her was incredibly beautiful. Olivia took off her earphones, called out to me, and pointed to the empty seat next to her. I subconsciously looked around. Olivia chuckled, "Don't worry. Sophia isn't here." Olivia turned her head and smiled. Her temperament was gentle. In the drama, she was the Prime Minister's daughter, and in real life, she was an intellectual goddess. When she smiled, there was a warm and gentle feeling like a warm spring flowing slowly. Olivia said in a low voice, "Sophia seems to have a lot of hostility towards me." I shook my head and said, "I don't know why either." Olivia lifted the tablet a bit. I leaned over curiously to take a look and was quite surprised to see myself on the TV drama. I said, "I didn't expect it to be aired so soon." Olivia replied with an and then said out of the blue, "No one expected Sophia to want to play Emily." At that moment, my enthusiasm suddenly seemed to be covered by snow. I withdrew my gaze and replied, "Yeah." I thought to myself, indeed, who could have thought that such a proud person like her would be willing to do this for David? I looked into the distance. There were a large number of crew members. Countless camera positions surrounded Sophia and David as they were rehearsing their scenes. I couldn't see clearly because there were too many people in between. Olivia followed my gaze. I laughed and said, "Sophia came to act in this drama because of David." Olivia suddenly stopped, her beautiful fingers gently traced on the small table. After a long time, she laughed out loud and said, "James, you're really slow-witted." I turned my head back. Olivia said, "You surely must have realized that Sophia is different to you, right? Just like a long time ago, in college, the whole department knew I had a crush on you, but only you didn't know." I was stunned. Olivia's words were so sudden that I didn't know how to respond. She then smiled relievedly and said, "That was so many years ago."
I suddenly remembered what David said. A person who isn't even a supporting role can't affect the plot. I shook my head and said, Sophia wasn't like this before. Now. I paused and added, she's just used to having me around for too long and doesn't want me to leave. Olivia patiently replied to me, just like a patient senior guiding an inexperienced junior in school, there are many people who want to get close to Sophia. Why is she only willing to stay by your side? James, you should think about it carefully. I found that I couldn't answer. Olivia changed the topic and said, have you watched the drama? The reviews are really good. While I was still in a daze, the shooting over there ended. Sophia walked towards us against the light. Everything around her was gilded with golden light. Her peach-shaped eyes were half open, and she gave me and Olivia an indifferent look. The director was very satisfied with what was just shot and was beaming. She gave the director a resentful glance, forcing the director to swallow the teasing words. Sophia probably thought it was boring again, turned around, and walked in a different direction. Olivia raised her chin and asked me, what? Aren't you going to go and comfort her? I looked at Sophia's receding figure, feeling a bit powerless. I shook my head and said, forget it. I'm tired. Actually, there weren't many major changes to the other plots. The drama was being shot and aired simultaneously. In reality, the shooting had reached the part where William was engaged in open and covert struggles and was about to ascend to the throne, while only the first episode had been released online. I only saw the completed episode when I went online. Because Sophia's appearance in the first episode was promoted early, it became very popular. I turned off most of the bullet comments and focused on watching the drama. In the beginning, there were some descriptions of William's daily life and background. At the end of the episode, it was exactly that heavy rain scene. I was lost in thought for a long time. I opened the bullet comments and watched it again. The comments changed from a unanimous "I feel so sorry for Emily. How could Sophia be in the mud?" to "She got a hug. Is this a side couple? I'm shipping it. Guys, Sophia's acting is amazing. I was watching on a tablet in the lounge. Just as I finished watching and was about to put it away, suddenly a voice came. The person sneered, "Netizens seem to be very supportive of you too." I looked up and saw David standing in front of me. He probably glanced at the bullet comments I was looking at. His assistant said in a shrill voice, "This was originally Mr. David's scene." His tone was sarcastic and the words were very unpleasant. David, however, smiled and replied to his assistant, "It doesn't matter. It's just a small supporting role with a few lines. It's just that Sophia is very popular, so more people are shipping you too. They're all just crazy fans." I said coldly, "You're really interesting. You were there when we were reciting lines and discussing the plot. If you had any objections, why didn't you raise them face to face? What? Now you come here to mock me?" David probably didn't expect me to retort. His smile was a bit strained. His annoyance made me feel happy. The assistant then said sarcastically again, "Let him have his moment of triumph. Sophia will release a new song's MV soon, and Mr. David will be the male lead. Who would care about this little bit of popularity?" My hand, which was packing things, paused. I remembered that this was indeed the case. According to the original plot, Sophia would have a new song next, and the male lead of the MV should be David. I rubbed my temples, thinking that it was good. Everything was going according to the original plot, and I could withdraw without hesitation. On the set, David and Sophia hardly communicated. But who knew about the love that had accumulated over the years behind this? However, the next second, a girl's teasing voice sounded. The girl sneered, half leaning against the doorframe. Her peach-shaped eyes were affectionate when she smiled, but when she didn't, like now, they were icy. Sophia frowned tightly and said word by word, "Who said that?" David and his assistant both looked over, their faces turning a bit pale. Sophia continued, "Why didn't I know I had a new song?" David called her, "Sophia." Sophia lifted her eyelids, rolled her eyes, and said coldly, "Are we that familiar?" I looked at Sophia, then at David. Sophia suddenly looked at me, her peach-shaped eyes smiling, instantly dispelling the cold wind like falling flowers flying. She stretched out her hand and said, "Mr. James, aren't you coming over?" Sophia asked me to wait outside for a while. After about a minute, she came out. I didn't quite catch what was said. She said it was okay. Sophia snorted and said, "You didn't come to comfort me, so I had to come to you. You've changed, James. In the past, if someone ridiculed you like this, you would have punched him. What's wrong with you now?" I suddenly realized that Sophia actually hoped I would teach David a lesson. A glimmer of joy welled up, but I still probed, "He's David." Sophia moved closer to me. She smelled like snow. She asked, "What about David?" I was speechless. What could I say? I couldn't say that David was the one she was flirting with at the press conference, the one she was willing to give everything for, the male lead arranged in her life script. Finally, I just said softly, "He's your male lead." Sophia was stunned for a moment, looked into my eyes, and said slowly, "He's not." She moved even closer, her red lips pressed tightly together. She said, "James, you asked me if I was used to having you by my side. I said it was never a matter of habit. But I also want to ask you, all these years you've been with me, is it just out of pity? You don't ask about the press conference, you don't ask why I wanted you to play Mark. You seem like an extremely noble person, giving a ray of light to someone in the abyss. And when she finally climbs out with great difficulty, you leave without saying anything." Sophia's peach-shaped eyes turned red, and a tear hung on her lower eyelid, as if a goddess suddenly had a weakness. Sophia suddenly reached out and gently hugged me, as light as a feather touch, but full of the smell of snow. Sophia said softly, "You can go." I don't know why, but my eyes felt a bit sore. I controlled my emotions and said word by word, "Sophia, but what if life is like a script? Whether it's me, you, David, or Olivia, we're all characters in the script. Maybe our fates were doomed from the beginning." Sophia interrupted, "My life can't be determined by a script. Please believe me. Even if it is a script, I will definitely change it." Sophia could indeed change the script. At least in this drama, she did it. With the scene of the hug in the rain in the first episode and a series of subsequent performances, without adding lines or changing the plot, she made the audience imagine all kinds of grudges and love-hate relationships between her and Mark. Still on the set, I was sitting next to the monitor. Sophia was scrolling through her phone without looking up, her eyebrows curved, looking very happy. I looked at her several times before she slowly gave me a glance and said arrogantly, "What?" I turned my head and said, "Nothing." Sophia then picked up the phone and showed it to me. It was the comments from netizens about Mark and Emily. I felt a headache looking at the screen full of exclamation marks, but still smiled slightly. She turned her face slightly, showing her perfect profile. I mentioned the press conference where she said lines to David. Sophia pouted and said, "You're only willing to ask me now." She pursed her lips and said seriously, "Actually, I wanted to test the attitude of my fans towards my love life." Sophia turned to look at me seriously and said, "I felt it a long time ago that David's existence was important to you. If you thought I was deeply in love with him, you should have come closer to understand, instead of choosing to leave." As the voices around faded away, I suddenly realized that this world wasn't like a cold piece of paper being unfolded, and everyone's fate wasn't pre-arranged. I wasn't anyone's supporting role. I was the master of my own life. If I wasn't even willing to reach out actively, how could I say I was truly in love? After His Majesty's command was broadcast, it had extremely high ratings and a good reputation. After the work was done, I still decided to go back to Hawaii. When I finished packing my luggage, Olivia came to knock on the door to see me off. She said some polite words. At the end, she leaned against the door and said to me, "Actually, I met Sophia a long time ago." I waited curiously for Olivia to continue. She said with a hint of apology in her eyes, "It was during our college anniversary. After the event, we went to have a meal. That was the time when many people teased us to be together and recited that poem they found from nowhere. Sophia came that day. She looked at me from a distance for a while and then left. Her eyes were so sad. After she left, I realized that she was looking for you, but in the end, she didn't talk to you. I somehow thought of what Sophia looked like when she was 20. Once, she stood under a streetlight, trying to put on gloves, but her body was shaking so much that she couldn't get them on. She frowned, took a half step back from me, slowly hugged her knees, and squatted down. She asked me in a trembling voice if I pitied her. Now I knew that she had come to look for me. Sophia wasn't on the set today. I received her message only after I got on the high-speed train. She sent me a question mark. I saw that it showed the other party is typing for a long time, and finally, 4 words came, "Be careful on the way." After a while, she sent 2 more words, "Wait for me." I replied, "Okay." The first thing I did when I got home was to go to the pizza place downstairs. I was quite familiar with the boss. He smiled and asked me, "Why didn't you come with your girlfriend?" I asked, "My girlfriend?" He said, "Yeah, that pretty young girl. After you went to college, she often came here to eat for no particular reason." I took a bite of the pizza. The crust was thin and the filling was abundant. There was a song playing in the store, and it happened to be Sophia's song "You Are My Silent Dependence" from some time ago. The lyrics went, "I crown you with all I have. No one knows this feeling that doesn't burden you.
I suddenly realized that perhaps all these years, it wasn't just me following her. The Emperor's Order still maintained its popularity, with 2 episodes being released every week. However, I still felt a bit uneasy. As the sun was setting, I went out for a walk. Right then, I saw a large LED screen hanging on a building. It said that Sophia's concert would be held in Hawaii in a week. My phone rang, and I picked it up casually. No one spoke on the other end for a long time. I looked up at the LED screen. On the huge poster, Sophia was half closing her eyes in an aloof manner. The lighting and shadow effects were so well done that it was impossible to look away. At the top were 3 words, Northern Lights. It took Sophia a while to call out, James. I smiled and said, Sophia, happy premiere of the new drama. After thinking for a moment, I added, Mark knows that Emily likes him. Then I hung up the phone. Since her debut, Sophia had always kept her personal information tightly under wraps. She was highly popular yet very low-key, and she didn't participate in variety shows. But suddenly, a video emerged. It was from our college anniversary. Sophia was at the very edge of the crowd. The camera caught her. The pixel quality wasn't high, but she was staring intently at the stage, with an expression of rare relaxation, a mix of fatigue and deep affection. The video was only a few seconds long, but it caused a huge stir. Fans were all discussing this video, and they were getting so close to finding out about me through it. Sophia, whose social media account hadn't been updated for ages, finally posted a message, Shoo, stop talking about it. The fans seemed to understand something and uniformly kept quiet, as if the whole world was cooperating with her. Some of Sophia's older videos were dug up, and her past experiences of being sidelined in roles and being targeted and excluded by her team members were exposed. People were shocked to realize that this girl had once had a downcast look and experienced setbacks. Who picked her up and wiped off the dust? Who straightened her shoulders after she had struggled for so many years? When Sophia's concert started, I bought a ticket and entered the venue with her fans. The whole place was filled with light boards. I blended in with the crowd, listening to them singing and loving her, and I felt very peaceful inside. The whole venue was pitch black, except for her on the stage, shining brightly. It was the first time I heard Sophia sing Northern Lights in its entirety. From the Northern Lights dive into the polar night, embracing her at 18 to I crown you with all I have, the whole audience listened in silence. Sophia now was like her most famous photo. The light shone on half of her face, while the other half was in the shadow. She should have been as calm as a cold goddess, but as she played the piano, her eyes and brows were full of tenderness. So the goddess fell tonight, half glamorous and half silent. She was the most eye-catching light in the whole place, distant and shocking, yet she was singing about her own Northern Lights. After Northern Lights ended, the whole place was quiet for a long time. Her deep affection was contagious, and everyone was moved by her. Sophia suddenly laughed, breaking the silence. She said, sorry, during the premiere of The Emperor's Order some time ago, what I said deceived you all. My favorite line wasn't that long passage. She lowered her head, smiling softly, and said, I only got one sentence right. I hope my name and his can exist together forever. These 2 sentences carried a lot of information. First, it denied the possibility of a relationship with David. Second, it was clear that Sophia had someone special in her heart. The scene became as lively as boiling water. Sophia scanned the whole audience and looked in my direction. Although I knew she couldn't possibly see me among so many people, I still subconsciously met her gaze. Sophia continued, he is my Northern Lights. He once asked me if I would fall in love with anyone who approached me when I was in the most difficult time. Sophia replied firmly. She slightly raised her head across the silent sea of people, with starlight flickering in her eyes, like unshed tears. Looking straight at me, she said, no. No one else can approach me except you. It can only be you, it must be you. Thank you for coming into my life, my Northern Lights. From 18 to 25, I like you the most. I only like you. She shared all her radiance with me. Sophia paused for a long time. The audience almost thought that the person she was referring to was present. Finally, Sophia turned around and said, thank you all for coming. But please don't dig too much into who he is. I don't want my feelings to burden him in the slightest. The whole place was silent for a moment, and then there was a burst of screams. A feeling that doesn't burden instantly topped the hot search list. The pizza place was still open at night. As soon as I entered, I saw 2 platycodon flowers on the table. The boss saw me and said with a smile, young man, your girlfriend just left. She put these flowers here. I raised my eyebrows in surprise, but still composed myself. I slowly finished a slice of pizza. After paying, I casually took one of the platycodon flowers. It was getting dark.
Hawaii is by the sea. At night, it was a bit cool. There was no one on the road. The sea breeze ruffled my clothes, but my heart was very peaceful. I thought that if I walked slowly, I would surely meet her. After all these years, this short moment didn't matter. I walked all the way to the beach. The evening breeze was gentle. I turned around reluctantly and saw Sophia walking towards me, carrying 2 cans of beer. She was wearing a white dress. Since there was no one around, she took off the things covering her face. She walked quickly, with a bright white moon hanging behind her over Hawaii. My heart was surging like the tide, yet also as calm as the sea surface. It seemed that I had been waiting for this moment for so many years. I took a deep breath. The breeze blew past my ears, and the stars passed across the clouds. I handed the platycodon flower to her. I traveled back in time just to meet her. I said, "Sophia, I like you. I've always liked you very much." She toned down her flamboyance, looked up at me seriously. Her ears turned a bit red, as if she had returned to being an 18-year-old girl, solemn and happy. She nodded delightedly and said softly, "I like you too." She slipped her hand into my fingers. Her hand was warm and dry, like spring blooming in a hidden corner. I lowered my head and placed a kiss on her lips, as cool as the moonlight. After years of love, my wish finally came true. I once thought I was a supporting character in a book, but I didn't know that someone had quietly placed me in her heart, year after year. You must be someone's northern lights too.